Sounds good. Well, let's get the show rolling. Welcome back to another episode of 217 South Mills.
Brought to you by Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane, Altoona, Wisconsin.
Joe, we're back in Altoona here, back at the coffee shop. Do we have a special this month at Cabin Coffee?
We do, Bill.
What is
Every month is a drink of the month. And this month is our Mint Sensation. Hey, Bill, it's got white coffee in it.
What, I hear this white coffee. What's this all about?
How do you not know what white coffee is by now?
Because other places don't have white coffee.
Yeah.
They don't brag it up like you do.
Yeah, you're right. The other places that sell burnt, stale coffee, they don't have white coffee. Hey, Bill, white coffee is 100% coffee, guaranteed. It's not treated with chemicals. It's not treated with anything. It's got more caffeine. For you, if you don't like that dark roasted flavor of coffee, this has not that robust dark roast, different flavor, more caffeine. It's amazing.
Like it. Sounds good. What are we? Before we get into the episode, we got to tell about our trials and tribulations with getting down to Naples and coming back on Naples. We had some interesting, exciting stuff in the airport.
I think anytime big guys travel, especially me and you, it's always entertaining. I know
it's entertaining for everybody else. It's a challenge for us.
It is. It's ridiculous. I mean, why are airplanes freaking seats so small? And they're getting smaller by the day. It's ridiculous.
It's all about the money.
I have a large ass. I mean, it needs to fit into.
And I got wide hips.
You have your mother's hips.
I do.
You have to accept that.
I know.
Yeah. So, funny story. We flew on an airline. I'm not sure if we're supposed to say what airline it is, nor do I care. But
they're not pumping us, so we're not going to say their name.
Absolutely. So we weren't able to sit by each other, basically. And so my wife had an exit row, and she gave it up to me. So I was sitting in the exit row, or she was going to, and then she was sitting over my right shoulder across the aisle. And Bill, where were you sitting?
I was sitting one row in front of the bathroom, which I've never been on an airplane that only had one. There was only bathrooms in the back. So everybody from row 1 all the way through, I think it was row 33, came to the back of the plane to do their business.
Absolutely. So we get on the plane. My wife points to me to my seat because I'm a giant toddler. And, well, she just escorts me through the airport because I have no idea where I'm going. I don't travel a whole lot, and I'm not very good at it. So she's like, your seat's right there. I'm about to sit down, and I look in the seat, and my cousin, who's a pilot, is sitting in the window seat. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So because he's a pilot, there is an empty seat no one can sit by the pilot, and I'm sitting in the aisle row. So I have an exit row seat. I have a seat in between me. I had the most comfortable airplane ride I've ever been on, ever.
And mine was extremely uncomfortable, but I had a nice crowd around me. We all became friends. There was a bunch of moms, a bunch of kids, a bunch of toddlers, babies. I had some older generational women behind me. Then I found out that 2 people sitting to my right was a dad and his son, both from Minnesota. Yeah. And I asked the poor son, yes, he was a Vikings fan. So I had to go on the phone and be like, I don't want to talk to you. You mind your business, stay on your device over there. But yeah, it was not comfortable in the back of the plane.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there, and time is flying by because I haven't seen my cousin in a long time. I got to talk about all those questions that you ever want to ask a pilot. I got to ask those. It was freaking amazing. I got to ask everything. And one of the flight attendants walks by, and I know you're in the back of the thing, and I appear over my shoulder, and you look uncomfortable as hell. And I can see this, and this is my opportunity. So he's walking by me. I said, hey, do me a favor. That big fat guy in the back, I said, you should just go up to him and say, you should see how comfortable that I was sitting. He's like, he has so much leg room. He's in the exit row. He's got a seat right beside him that's empty. I said, just go back there and bust his balls a little bit. And you can take
it. And he said it, which totally rocked me. Everybody around me is like, who is he talking about? How is this person talking to you like that? I'm like, that's my buddy. They already knew that we were old teammates and roommates, and the whole back of the plane knew what we were doing before I think we even took off. I was just talking it up back there. But then I saw a gentleman walk out of the restroom, and I was like, hey, can you go up there, that fat dude with the baseball cap on in the exit row? Can you tell him to stop shifting in his seat? Because every time he shifts, the whole back of the plane moves. So, yeah, we were doing that back and forth quite a bit. We included many passengers on the plane to send messages back and forth because you knew we weren't going to get out of the seat, at least on the way there. Yep. You did get out of the seat. Or no, you did get out of the seat on the way there. to use the restroom. That's when you sort of
Yeah.
nudged me a little.
Yeah. Well, it was tight quarters. People trying to get around me, and I had to lean into you a little bit and kind of like
You almost
push my
climbed
way.
on me like a jungle gym.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Everybody was entertained. And then the last one I remember sending to you is telling a passenger that, can you tell that guy with the incredibly big nose to stop breathing so heavy because I can hear the whistling up here.
And that erupted the whole back of the plane in laughter and humor. They absolutely loved that one. So
It was great.
needless to say, the uncomfortableness, we had fun. I do want to reach out to your cousin. Maybe we should send him an email from the show. How could we possibly forge or get pilot status without actually being a pilot?
I
Just
agree.
to get that empty seat next to us.
I did ask him, is there a size requirement? Do you have to be a certain size?
Like a size max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said for commercial planes, no. Military, yes. So I'm like, I might as well put that on my resume and start doing that.
I mean, could we just walk in there and say we're pilots?
I don't think so.
We got to talk to them, figure it out.
Absolutely.
Well, what we're here to talk about today, the shoebox, the infamous scandal of
Scandalous.
2000.
Scandalous shoebox.
So let's start it off with the shoebox, which I never even heard of, obviously not growing up in Wisconsin, is known throughout Wisconsin and the Midwest as the Midwest's largest discount shoe store. So just to jump right into it, and I'm going to talk about what they sell, just so everybody knows, because we still do support the shoebox.
Yeah.
We were happy. It was nothing negative against the shoebox, and we'll get into what happened. But they sell work shoes, steel toes, running shoes, cleats, dress shoes, hunting boots, men and women's shoes. They sell socks, backpacks, a lot of athletic stuff.
Yeah.
I take my kids down there for sports gear. The nice thing I liked about the shoebox after college was you could find whatever you're looking for, especially guys like us with shoe size. You can't go to a sporting goods store, a local sporting goods store, and find our sizes.
Okay.
So down there, they have the wide shoes, they have the large shoes. Aaron Gibson, I think we were talking about, was like a size 19.
Yep.
I think the shoebox went up to like 20s in some of the sizes. But the whole thing with the discount and the free shoes. So yes, we got discounts as athletes. And I'll let you lead into what our freshman year was like, how we got introduced to the store of the shoebox.
So I was there the summer before you came down, because you came down right at the beginning of camp, and everyone was talking about the shoebox. I didn't have a vehicle down there, but my roommate did, and we loaded up a bunch of people to go to the shoebox. And I didn't know anything about the shoebox. I didn't have a lot of money. This didn't, and like you need to go to the shoebox. Everyone goes there, and you can get shoes very reasonable with how it was. And I'm like, very reasonable. Yeah, very reasonable. And I kind of questioned, like, well, I mean, how reasonable are we talking here?
Sounds a little fishy.
You know, it got my
Going down that
I
road.
thought it was a little weird, but
Yeah.
okay. So we all pile into a really old pickup truck, Tank's truck, and drive to the shoebox. It's like 20 minutes away, 25 minutes away. And I get there, and I got introduced to the owner of the shoebox, and he's like, hey, do you want to sign the wall? So I look over, and there's a huge W with a whole bunch of autographs, and I was dang honored to be able to sign the wall. So I went shopping for shoes, not knowing what's going on here. Like, hey, I'm just here looking at shoes. I'm not even sure I'm going to buy anything yet. I'm just here, like, looking at the shoes, and I'm like, these don't seem all that discounted. Like, these shoes seem normal price shoes to me, nothing discounted. And they're like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, you keep saying don't worry about it. Like that was the part that kept on raising me.
Yeah,
Like,
what does it mean?
what is
You
don't
start
worry
questioning.
about it? And no one would tell me that or describe it. Just don't worry about it. So I went up there I found a pair of shoes in my size, liked them, fit great, ready to buy them. And I went up there, and I didn't pay the price that was on the box.
He pulled out the old Sharpie, right?
Yeah, he did.
Pulled out the Sharpie, crossed the price off,
Absolutely.
wrote down a new price.
Absolutely. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And then he's like, do you want a shirt? And I'm like, free shirts? Heck yeah, I want free shirts. So I went over and I grabbed the shirt. And I'm like, this is truly the greatest place. And so I walked out of there with a pair of shoes and I think 1 or 2 shirts. Happy to have them.
Absolutely. And I had a very similar experience where I walked in there, got asked to sign the wall. All of a sudden, you pick out your shoes, Sharpie the price off, writes down the new price.
Mhm.
You know, the funny thing, you ask for socks or anything like that, that just gets thrown in the bag. And this whole dilemma, to break it down for the fans out there, the way this all went down, an employee that worked at the shoebox, I believe, got fired or let go.
Mhm.
And don't ask me why, but the shoebox had their filing system was a cardboard box for athletes because some athletes did have tabs out there, which that me and you never had a tab.
No.
I did feel like that was crossing the line a little. We're getting a discount, be appreciative of the discount, but pay what you owe type deal. And this guy that gets let go from the Shoebox thinks he's going to bury the Shoebox or put egg on their face. He takes that box to the Wisconsin State Journal.
Right.
The Wisconsin State Journal writes a story about it, and I happen to be one of the first 7 names on the Badgers who gets listed in the article. And it all came down to my dad. He'd find a pair of shoes and, wear them for 3, 4, 5 years. That amount of time, those shoes go out of style. Well, Steve always was able to get whatever type of shoes anybody wanted. So my dad called up once from Pennsylvania, used a credit card, paid for it, paid for the shipping, got them shipped to the house. So I had a receipt associated with my name. And in the Wisconsin State Journal, they had a coupon for students, and it said any student at UW or college student in Madison gets 10% off at the Shoebox. So they took that discount versus a discount we got, and I think based on different dollar amount levels, you either got 24 hours community service, you got suspended for 1 game, or guys that had large discounts got suspended for 3 games. We got notified of it from the NCAA, I think 2 or 4 hours before kickoff in Camp Randall. So literally my left tackle, who was going to be his first year starting, Ben Johnson, he's one of the guys that has a suspension. He has to sit. I have another young player come up to tackle, and we're all being told this 2 hours before the game starts. So we're trying to scramble. We're playing Murray State, who I think at the time was 1AA, but because of this whole disaster, I think it was like 30 some guys had to get suspended anywhere between 1 game and 3 games. And we had the first 4 games to pick. All right, he's down, he's up, he's down, like that all across the board. So that was the whole deal. The things that upset me about the scandal, as we call it, is I had to get interviewed by University of Wisconsin lawyers to sort of say the university side of the case. And they're like, well, why do you go to the Shoebox? I'm like, well, the name of the store right on the sign, which we're going to have on the show, is a Midwest's largest discount shoe store.
Absolutely.
Why would you not go there? They have my size. Why would I not go there?
Great selection. Huge selection.
Humongous. They have 2. Their second building, which now I think is like a clearance area, was their whole stock and inventory. So like they had runners. As soon as you said shoe size, you picked out a couple of shoes. They'd be running next to the next door building, bringing the shoes back. But when I'm talking to this lawyer, the lawyer brings up that his family lives in Southern Illinois and drives to right outside of Madison, Wisconsin, twice a year to go to the Shoebox. And I go, why are we even doing this then? He's like, I don't know. It's formality. We got to follow the rules. And then the NCAA, I felt like, just treated us like garbage and didn't take the case seriously and just wanted to slap a punishment and move on. And, it definitely put a dent in that 2000 season, especially the way we started off. Michael Bennett had a huge opportunity to do a lot of things that last year. And that whole deal really took us down a little bit. But what was I going to say next? Oh, so the one bad part of it, there was guys like me and you getting discounts. And yes, we might be getting more than what a student's getting based off of the newspaper. But I witnessed this, and we talked about this, that we'd be in there and you'd see a farmer or just a local resident looking at a pair of boots. The owner, Steve, would come up to him, and he's like, what do you think about the boots? He's like, oh, I love them, but can't afford them. Steve would cross off the price, write a new price. How about that? And the guy's like, well, I appreciate it, but that's still a little bit out of my price range. Can't do it right now. Cross that price off, lower it again. And the guy's like, well, if you're serious, I'll take him for that. And Steve would sell him for that.
And he did that not just for us, but it was for farmers. I never saw a single person ever pay full price for a pair of shoes or a pair of boots.
Correct.
Ever.
And kids were always getting shirts.
Absolutely.
But back to the shirts. We should talk about how our wardrobe was pretty much Shoebox.
I mean, that was my wardrobe. My whole wardrobe in college was issued gear and Shoebox shirts because, again, they didn't have a tremendous amount of money in college. So a different colored Shoebox shirt every day. And he must have loved it, the owner, because we were walking billboards.
Yes. Every
picture we had pictures of us wearing Shoebox shirts, and it was a great relationship.
And we talk about issued gear that football players or athletes get, that it sort of is like a stamp that you're an athlete at the university. And certain guys, you'd get certain young guys that would want to wear that issued gear every day to school and every day just so everybody knew they were a football player.
Right.
And then guys like us, once we got established, and let alone by our size, we didn't have to put a poster on. But the Shoebox shirts were basically like issued gear. Everybody had them. We'd wear them for workouts. I mean, if funny enough, looking back, there was probably guys wearing them underneath their pads on game day just because that was the shirt they had on.
I still have Shoebox shirts in my closet right now.
I think I'm down to about 2 pairs that are more or less like workout shirts right now because they got holes. But we got to get back there, and whether they want to sponsor us or not, I think we got to get a Shoebox shirt. Maybe we'll even hang it on the wall or something.
Absolutely.
Just as memorabilia, as you see, like we're starting to add some stuff to the table, and future shows we'll talk about some of the stuff. But
it's that time of the show again, where we like to thank our sponsor, Cabin Coffee Altoona. Cabin Coffee Altoona is located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane, located just off Highway 53, the River Prairie exit. Stop by and try my favorite drink, the Ice Breve, with sugar-free caramel, sugar-free chocolate, and sugar-free vanilla. It's great tasting and fits into all your parameters for your keto diet. Just remember, folks, everything's better at the Cabin.
Yeah, the Shoebox, you can't say anything bad about it. They have always done great things for us. But one of the other funny things that came out of the Shoebox was, one, we had, and this is where I think things went off the rails from the university standpoint with what was happening. I will stand by and say what we did was not a punishable offense. Right. I ended up only having to do community service. I volunteered at schools and spoke at schools to pay my debt. But there were basketball players that were taking issued basketball shoes and turning them in, which is essentially school property. Now, you get into the whole, who was it, Manziel or Reggie Bush that was like signing their jerseys. In my head, it's like, well, if you're the athlete, that is your jersey. It's your property. Just like after bowl games when we got jerseys, if we wanted to sign it and give it to somebody, in my eyes, that's our property in that moment. Yep. But the basketball players, they were still on the team. It was during the season. They're taking basketball shoes that they don't want to wear, trading them in to get whatever type of shoes they want to wear or a credit on the store. That's a riding credit.
Right.
But then we had, and I can't remember his name, nor would I say it if I did, but we had a freshman that I think had a tab of $2,900 at the Shoebox. And I'm just like, did you get shoes for your whole hometown?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I took advantage of it. Like, when my family came out, I would take my family there. Heck, I might have taken advantage of it a little bit after college.
I can promise you I did. I took advantage of it after. Yeah, my father-in-law was looking for a pair of hunting boots, and we went there after college, and guess what? He didn't pay full price.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he wasn't my father all the time. He was just my girlfriend's husband or father. But, yeah, we took advantage of it after I was gone.
Yeah. And, and I look back, and I just wonder who that employee was that really thought he was going to do something bad to the Shoebox as a store and a business, and all he did was allow them to go through the roof.
Correct.
I mean, College Game Day was showing up there.
Yep.
Any opposing fans for years after that took place, they would always stop at the Shoebox the day before the game.
Sure.
Just absolutely insane how he initially thought it was going to go and how the outcome was totally different. But it's one of those things that's just going to live in infamy with us. It's always talked about. It's always brought up. We always laugh about it, and you always see those guys wearing the shirts. But, yeah, we definitely need to make a trip down there. At the very least, get a picture outside the place, grab a couple shirts. He has moved on from the business. His daughters have taken the business over with running it. So the discount is no longer. So any players listening, the discount's done. Yeah. But you're still going to have all those sizes. I think they even have a size 21 or 22 inside the store. I mean, and that's the other thing is the memorabilia. He was a big sports fan in general, but I believe an Arizona Cardinals baseball fan. That was his number one team. But he also owned Rookies, the restaurant up the road. And you've been there, correct?
Been to Rookies, and they also have that wiffle ball, almost like a – it's not.
I think it's to scale.
Yeah, to scale
of the Cardinals field.
Yeah, because he's a huge Cardinals fan.
Yes.
But it's a great restaurant.
And before all these like you see these wiffle ball games that the kids are playing where the ball's like wiggling and stuff like before all that became popular, you'd go out to Rookies and look at that wiffle ball field, and it was just unbelievable.
It was impeccable. It was so realistic. It looked amazing.
And then at Rookies, the restaurant, there's even more memorabilia: Badgers, Packers, Arizona Cardinals, MLB, NFL, college players all over the walls.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he have affiliation with the Madison Mallards too?
He owned the Mallards, if not still owns them to this day.
So he was a big contributor and just a great guy.
Yeah, he came to Wausau a couple times when I happened to be at a Woodchucks game in Wausau, and he came up with the Mallards. So cool. See him from time to time. But yeah, it was just always a great place to go. Can't say enough positive things about it.
Did I ever tell you that even after I was done with football and I was in law enforcement, I got several calls about the shoebox? I had several.
You mentioned this. You got to tell this.
I had a phone call. I had 2 phone calls, and this would have been probably 2006, maybe 7 or 8. And I get a random call from unknown
just number. As social media is starting to get popular, but this is the old school phone scam.
Absolutely. Calls me up and identifies as somebody with the university and is telling me that my name is definitely affiliated with the shoebox scandal. And I'm like, I just kind of chuckled to myself, and they're requesting me to send in, and I forget what the dollar amount, but it was a stupid amount, like $1,500. And I said, well, how do you have any of the information? And he's like, oh, well, we have credit card receipts. And I didn't have a credit card when I was in college. Like that wasn't in my realm. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a credit card until I got married, and my wife had a cosign for me. Man, come on. So I knew it was BS. And then the other one is very similar scenario where they said, I get a call and they're going to start pursuing this legally. And I said, well, what are you going to do? Like, what are your options here? Oh, we'll take your diploma. And I said, at the time I was a cop and I was on SWAT and I was a sniper. And I said, you should 1,000% come to my house right now and
show up.
Just please, I'll give you my address. You can show up right now. Like I am anticipating, I'll make snacks. Like, come on over.
Exactly. You get excited for something like that. Well, I don't know. I think that pretty much sums up the shoebox. I mean, I just can't. I got to say it one more time. I can't believe the trouble that followed, all from a guy turning his stuff. And the stars aligned. I mean, who would have thunk that he's keeping records in a cardboard box? Why were athletes' records separate? I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of holes and rabbit holes you could go down digging with some of these questions, but just to think that guy thought he was going to ruin his business, and he probably increased it. He probably allowed him to retire 10 years before he thought he was going to retire.
And not only that, we talked about this with Coach Alvarez and his ability to be able to adjust on the fly, and being at the helm of the football team. And before, was it 4 hours before the game?
It was 2 or 4 hours before the game. Yeah.
All of a sudden, you have to rearrange who's starting and who's sitting out, and be able to have that game plan in that amount of time. And, you have guys who haven't played then that were backups that come in and play. And, there was I
had a guy next to me. I'll tell you my story.
This is what I was kind of getting to. Okay. Like, you need to tell the story, Bill.
So I'll leave the name out. But, so I'm in the locker room, and I kept saying, what do you want to go over? I got my playbook out. And by this point, I'm a senior. So it's not like, I might skim it a little bit, or if there's a special defense or a new play we have in, just review some stuff. More or less, guys like us would talk about, what are we doing on this? Like, just let me throw something out at you.
On the backside of this, who do you have if you have this technique?
Just bouncing thoughts off each other. And when I go to this guy who's never played in the game before, I'm like, come on, let's go through the playbook. And I start flipping through. He's like, I'm good. And I'm like, every time you say you're good, it makes me a little bit more nervous. Like, please stop saying you're good. Yep. And I'm flipping through, and we're starting at the basics with zone, with power, with counter, Bob, all that stuff, and going through it. And I'm like, listen, we're going to be heading out for warm-ups pretty soon. I can't say this clear enough. If you have any questions, anything at all, there's no dumb question. Just ask me in the huddle, ask me on the sidelines, on the bench, ask me as we're walking up to the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. I will tell you who to block, how to block. I'll tell you what foot to step with. Mm-hmm. Just ask me. He's like, I'm good. We get in the huddle. Brooks Bollinger's our quarterback. He calls the play. And I look at him in the huddle, and he gives me a nod like, we're all good. Yeah. I'm like, this just feels off. Go up to the line of scrimmage, get down to my stance. I have a 3 technique on me, which is a guy on my outside shoulder, my left shoulder. And the tackle, who's playing in his first game, so Brooks starts the cadence. You hear blue 20. And right after he says blue 20, the tackle looks at me, the new guy, and he goes, hey, Bill. I go, what? He goes, is this a run or a pass?
Oh, no.
And still in the middle of the blue 20, the 3 technique says to me, yeah, Bill, is this a run or a pass? And I look at him, I'm like, it's a run. What, like, and then boom, the ball gets snapped. We do the play.
Right.
I got a little violent with him afterwards, but yeah, it was, and I was just like, oh my Lord. Like, we've been in some battles on the football field, especially in Camp Randall, but this is a 1AA game that, it was basically, that was in the era where you didn't, and that's the one thing I like about Wisconsin today. Back then, we didn't schedule tough competition. It was almost like the non-conference was the warm-up before you go into the Big Ten.
Right.
And this is a 1AA school, Murray State. I've never heard of them before that game, never really heard of them after that game.
Right.
And it was like, oh my gosh, we cannot lose in Camp Randall to Murray State.
Correct.
And it was the hottest, most humid night I think I ever played a football game in, on top of having all these new guys at all different positions. But we also saw some wild stuff happening. You joke about me remembering stuff. I probably wouldn't even remember this kid's name until we started talking about this story. Josh Hunt. Remember he was a punt returner for us? I think Nick Davis, don't quote me on this, but I think Nick had to sit that game. I think Nick got suspended. Josh Hunt goes in. Josh Hunt returned a punt for a touchdown
I actually remember
against Murray State.
Now that you said that,
and it's just like the kid's first game ever starting as a punt returner and takes one back to the house, like 80 yards back to the house. So good things happen, but just the temperature of that game, the humidity that night, I actually had to change shoes at halftime just from all the sweat. Like, my shoes felt like each shoe was like 10 pounds each. Yeah. So it just, everything about that game was crazy. And it all started, like, we had hopes of, three-peating Rose Bowl trip. And then all of a sudden it's boom, the NCAA is bringing these violations on you and you have to suspend these guys. And to your point about Coach Alvarez, it wasn't just how he handled that game. It was over the first 4 games of the season.
Absolutely.
Where different guys are down, trying to okay, that guy's out for 3 games. This guy's only out for 1. Both our cornerbacks are out, but let's start one corner this game, one corner the next game, at least have 50% of greatness on the field as opposed to 0% of it. So, yeah, it was wild, but
super stressful situation in a very short amount of time, and as a starter, you were a senior. Like, this affected the outcome of your entire season because of this. Yeah. Like, again, you had the aspirations of going to a three-peat. Yeah. I mean, you were the first teams to go to repeat, going for a three-peat, and obviously, it was detrimental to your senior year.
And I even gave, like, what really got me motivated for the NFL was Chris McIntosh, who's now currently the AD at Wisconsin. He was my left tackle for my first 3 years playing. And I remember Chris sat me down and gave me like this, almost like a mentor to mentee talk before my freshman year when I started. And he's like, listen, here's the standard you got to be up to, this and that. And I apologize to Chris. I probably broke a couple toes on his right foot by stepping on him with 7 studs. But by my junior year, his senior year, he has a very similar sit down with me. And he's like, listen, I'm getting looked at. I got potential to go high in the draft, and you need to step your game up just as much as I need to step my game up, because what you do is going to help me, but the looks I get are going to also help you.
Correct.
So I have the same talk with the next guy that steps into place at left tackle, and then literally like 2 to 4 hours before the game, he's not playing today. And I can't remember if he was out for 1 game or 3 games, but it's just like, what the heck's going on?
The game preparation beforehand is so stressful. The amount of knowledge that you have to obtain and learn. And if you're a backup, you're supposed to be at that same level, but
without the reps.
Yep. So you almost have to be more into practices because you're not getting the reps. Yep. You have to be able to be able to know what's going on. You have to watch film. And I know the gentleman that you're talking about, and I don't think he was that committed at all. And
there wasn't that much film study.
No.
He wasn't a frequent visitor in the film room.
It's just one of those things, too. Like, you're on TV, man. Like, the last thing I ever want to do is embarrass myself, embarrass my teammates, and embarrass my team. And, And I wasn't playing at the time. I was already headed my career in knee injury, so I was done playing at the time. So I was of no use to you. But, Bill, if I was out there, I would have taped up and kind of come back out there and try to help.
I hear you. I know you would have. You probably would have, even if you were near the sidelines that night. I'm like, I'll tape up my knee. Get out there.
I'm going in.
But probably the funny part was the left tackle that was supposed to start next to me was Ben Johnson. Yeah. Ben ended up having a good career at Wisconsin and even having opportunities after Wisconsin. But he was so mad when he got told he had to sit that game. He went right to his locker, opened up his locker, and what's hanging inside his locker is a Shoebox shirt. So we wore the Shoebox shirt the whole time. And I don't even think those guys were allowed on the sidelines.
Right.
I think they had to stay like in the locker room during it. Almost like today when we see a guy get ejected.
He has to go to the locker room.
I could be wrong, but I know for a fact while we were getting ready to take the field before the game, Ben had his Shoebox shirt.
Absolutely.
And it was like one of those, like, I think I wore mine a lot more after that all went down. Like, screw it. That's the punishment you're going to give us. I'm going to support this
Absolutely.
business that much more because they've supported us.
Every interview, Bill's out there sporting his Shoebox shirt. Every interview is like, oh, here, I'm going to put on a new color, a new flavor one. There you go.
But to your point, like what you said about backups. So I experienced both sides of that. When in college, I ended up having the opportunity. I started every game. When I went to the NFL, I was primarily a backup in the NFL. Right. And to your point, yes, you gotta put in so much more film work than the starters. Like I had the opportunity in playing different games. Ironically, they were all divisional games against Detroit twice, Minnesota, where I was basically in as a starter pretty early in the game. And I remember in the Minnesota game, I don't think I had one rep in practice with the Packers with the starters. Right. I did all the second team looks against the defense, but I was running basically Minnesota play, very similar, but running what they wanted to show our defenses a look. And Marco Rivera went down the third play of the game. So I went in starting at the fourth play of the game, basically without one rep in practice with the starters. So now I'm going off of having Doug Peterson, who was the backup quarterback in Green Bay. I'm running off Doug's cadence all week because we're running with the second team. We're not even in the NFL, which is comical. We don't even call plays when you're on second team. They still show you the scout cards.
Oh, really?
So they have a card, like if it's a power, they have the circle with the arrow, like you're pulling around the corner and this is the linebacker you're going at. But I'm going off Doug's cadence all week. And the one rarity, and we'll get into it probably next month when we start talking about the Packers and the draft and all that, is Favre had a very different cadence that nobody else went off of in the NFL. And ironically, Aaron Rodgers does the same exact cadence. And other than those two, I've never seen anybody else. And I played center a little bit after Green Bay, and it got me in trouble because I stuck with Favre's cadence because that's where I first learned to play center. And basically anybody else, and I don't want to hit the mic, the ball would get snapped when they call it on one. It's blue 20, set hut. And like right when I'm clapping, you're getting the ball. Right. Well, Favre wanted it on the first letter of the second color. So if he goes, I want it snapped on one, he'd go blue 20, set hut.
Oh.
And there's a game, we were in college, I think, when Green Bay played San Fran in the divisional playoff game, and Favre was mic'd up. Edgar Bennett was his running back. Favre's underneath Frank Winters at center, and he goes, blue 20, gets the ball in his hands, and as he's putting the ball into Edgar Bennett's belly, he's saying set hut. Yep. And the linemen are already like 2 steps downfield. He's got the ball in the backfield, but he's still saying the cadence. That's awesome. He just always wanted it quick, right. Even in shotgun. Like if you had to say how many yards back a quarterback was in shotgun, what would you say? 5, right?
5, 6. Yeah.
5, 6 is like the general. Favre would be up like 3.5 yards.
Oh, really?
And he never wanted, like every other quarterback, they want that tight spiral coming back, hitting them right above the waist. Favre just wanted a little lob back to him. And he'd be right up there. As soon as you lob it back, boom, he catches it, then starts his drop. But just everything was a little bit different. And I learned that way, but I got told really quickly, when I say it's on one, it's on one. Don't be snapping it early. I got threatened by Mark Brunell. Yep. He thought I was going to break a finger. Yeah. But I think that was a good episode on the Shoebox.
I do too. And for all you people who don't know what the Shoebox is, you can look it up. I'm sure it's in the archives.
I think we're even going to have a map on during this, probably before I'm saying this right now, but I want to do a map to show you from 217 Mills to the Shoebox, and we'll show the route that we took. The other thing we didn't mention is all the farmland in between.
Absolutely.
So like that first time going out there.
First time going out there, someone says, hey, we're going to go to the Shoebox. I'm like, what's the Shoebox?
The city of Madison, and boom, just farms.
And you're out 20 minutes, you're on the field, and you're like, where are we going? Don't worry about it. Don't tell me don't worry about it, because I'm kind of want to know where I'm going.
I think from downtown Madison, I think it was 14 miles. But once we would drive 4 miles, you hit country. Yep. And it's just farm after farm. And then the other weird thing, do you remember the houses that were buried into the hills?
Yeah.
They were, I forget what term they call that. I never saw that before, ever in my life. But yeah, there was like 3 houses that were like half buried into the side of a mountain. And it was environmentally
friendly,
like helpful or friendly, like helped with the heat and the air conditioning.
Geothermal something.
Yeah, something like that.
Crazy.
Somebody could look that up and tell us what we actually were trying to say.
Somebody who's smart with science and stuff, because it's not us.
Sounds good. Well, good episode.
Hey, thanks, guys, for joining us again for our 217 South Mills podcast, brought to you by Cabin Coffee. And we're located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane. You realize I almost screw that up every freaking time I say it.
I think it's too many twos.
Yes, too many twos.
The 217.
217 South Mills, brought to you by Cabin Coffee. See, I screwed up right now.
Just come to Cabin Coffee, Altoona. We'll see you next time.
Google it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Joe and I today.
We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you like what you heard, please give 217 South Mills a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Go tell your friends about us. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'd like to thank Cabin Coffee Altoona for sponsoring us. Everything is always better at the cabin. See you next time. And remember, folks, red ass to run.